channel. It's Mark from Powersonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. In today's video we're actually looking at another new build, so this is a brand new property. It's never been occupied before, recently been handed over by the developer, and we're here to have a check through it because there's been some issues noted about equipment not working. So this is a buy-to-let. They're going to have tenants in here shortly, and the certificate that they've been provided with was questionable based on the circuit arrangements within the board itself, and also some things in and around here. The fact that they weren't working was sort of flashing some warning lights in the letting agent and the owner's mind. So we're here having a look around, and I'll show you some of the other bits as we move through. But on the consumer unit, and you'll see what we've got here is the tails coming through are 16mm twin and earth, as you'll see there, and we have also got a couple of earthing conductors on there as well, and I believe they run off out to the consumer unit in the meter cabinet, and we'll have a look at that later on. There's a few little gremlins in here that you can kind of see. You've got a bit of exposed copper here on the CPCs, which is more than I would like. The same on the neutrals. But I mean, when you look at the way these are supplied from the manufacturers with the tails like that, you know, that can sometimes seem like nitpicking. We do have grommet strip in the back. There's no fire seal, and again, it's a cavity timber wall. So I mean, there's the debate if that's necessary or not, and I know people say it's just the consumer units that have to contain the spread of fire, and fire sealing isn't necessary, but you'll find in a lot of the manufacturers' literature that it is. The big thing we've found on this, if you look down here, is these terminations on the top of these breakers. They're actually loose, so they're just spinning. They won't tighten and torque down, and it's more than one. I mean, this is quite a common find that we come across, especially within new builds, so sort of more recent work when people have been using impact drivers. This is what I suspect has happened here, and I'll show you a bit later on when we put this to the test with the right size screwdriver, because I've not got the right one in my pocket. Actually, there's one down here, so let's see if I can grab hold of it and demonstrate. I believe it's this one. Let's find them, because I don't want to appear to be lying to you. Is it the cooker one, maybe Matthew said? Yeah, there we go. So you can see that one there. It's just spinning and it's not tightening. So I believe that's been done up. You can see I just pulled it out. Done up with the impact gun. It's the same, I think, on the buzz bar one on here. So pop that in. So you can see again spinning. And I think Matthew said there was another one over here because I've got him with me today. Yeah, that one over there as well. So there's more than one. I think, what is it, Matthew? 3 or 4 of these?
Ones with the black marks on them.
The ones with the black marks. Oh, okay. So there's 3 on the top, and then this one down here as well on the buzz bar. And it's typical for impact driver tightening. You know, you start doing the old dugger on these and they will just snap. They're not designed or rated for it. We'll pop them out and we'll have a look. Actually, we'll see if we can see if they've split on the metal clamp on top of the MCBs. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And yeah, we'll crack on with the rest of the look around this place. Matthew's been diving into it for a couple of hours now. I've just turned up to come and get some footage on it and have a little chat about it. And as always, get involved in the comments. If you're spotting stuff here that you don't like, let me know what you think, and I'll show you around the rest of the install. So this is the meter position for this one, and you'll see we've got a 100 amp service fuse and TNCS supply. Goes through an electricity meter. We then have the isolator for the installation, and you can see we've got it locked off there at the minute. So for those of you worried about the position of the breakers inside, it's an irrelevance because it's turned off there. But most excitingly, we've got this secondary consumer unit here, because going off to the board again in the middle of the house, we have got this 16mm twin and earth. We've also got the bonding cables coming back here as well. You can see we've got another 100 amp isolator in here with a switch fuse, and that is rated at, actually looked at this yet. We can get it out. I would imagine it's an 80, but let's see what they've put in. No, they've actually put a 63 in. So there we go. And I guess the fact that this is here would enable somebody at some point to fit an EV charge point in. You could adjust this and do it from there, which would be quite handy because the driveway is here. So that's nice to see, and that's the way you do it. We're not supposed to be fitting anything in these, certainly within the areas that we live. The DNOs don't like it, and they fitted an additional box in the wall. So lovely stuff. We'll go get on inside and have a look around and see what else we can see. So we'll start upstairs, and this is the front bedroom. So you can see it's still an active construction site. Actually, they're just getting the park finished over there. The road's not quite been done. So we are looking through this for a full EICR, full check over. We've got a socket in the corner here with telephone and TV point. Over this side, a socket for either side of the bed, I imagine. Single pendant and a light switch over here. Matthew's had a lot of these open. He's saying the actual terminations within the accessories looks pretty decent, but there are a few gremlins, and we'll show you those downstairs. So on the landing, we've got a light and a smoke alarm. This is one of the problems, actually, the way the wiring is terminated into these, and I'll show you on the one downstairs because we've still got that off the ceiling. We've got a fan isolator for the bathroom. This is just a little storage cupboard, nothing in there electrically, I don't think. Oh no, we've got a couple of zone valves in there and the wiring centre. So there's that to have a look at and make sure it's in good shape. There is another 2 bedrooms at the back, and again similar kind of thing to the other one. We've got a couple of sockets in here. It's not a very big room. Pendant with a loft hatch, and then a light switch just around the corner from the door there. Socket on the landing that I didn't show you, and a couple of light switches here, one for the bathroom, one for the landing. And this is the other back bedroom. See again, there's nothing behind the door, so a couple of sockets, a little bit stingy on the old socket outlets, I would say. It's a pendant up there and a basic light switch. And again, I think they're just the budget range of accessories. I guess the developer probably sells an upgraded spec based on what you choose at the point of sale, and that's what this occupier's purchase has gone for. Bathroom itself, we've got one of these beefy extractor fans on the ceiling. I'm not sure how I would feel about that in my own bathroom, but you know, each to their own. This is one of the gremlins we found, and it's typical again of spotlight wiring. So these are GU10 cans, and again you can see they've not had the outer sheath taken into the actual clamp itself. But I mean, if you look at these type of fittings, you do still get a gap between the actual clamp as well. You know, they're not the best. I'm not a massive fan of those. It's just personal preference for containing the inner cores. It's just getting them in, it can be really difficult. So they're not helping the installers there. There's an easy way of terminating the cabling, so you often end up with it done like that. But at least fire rated, and we can pop them back up in the ceiling and drop them in our report. All the spotlights are like that, so just drop one down to show you, but all 4 in here are like it. Same in the bathroom downstairs as well. Yeah, we've got the shaver point there above the sink, and otherwise it's a nice little bathroom, that one. We'll have a little drop downstairs and I'll show you what we've got. We'll go through from front to back, and I can show you where the consumer unit is in relation to the meter cabinets as well. So Matthew's got this light switch open here. You see it's not dressed horrendously. They've taken the neutrals down to the switches. Is that the same on all the light switches? Yeah, so they said they've dropped the neutrals in. Don't know how that's coming out on camera because I'm in a bit of a bright spot. So, there we go. And they're in a little chop block in the back. Back box is earthed, which is nice to see. And yeah, we've not got strappers labelled up on here, but there you go. We're at least wired in nicely. There's no excess copper on show. Really, that's good. And this is the smoke alarm base. I was saying about if I jump up on the stairs, and I can show you as that's pushed up to the ceiling. You can see all the there's no encasement on the basic insulation. That's just pushed up into the floor and ceiling void. So it needs a proper mounting base really, where they can be tidily wired away. Don't like that. So in the kitchen, and the meter cabinets are just on the other side of this wall. So again, front of the house, meter cabinets, and if you see over there under the stairs, that's where the consumer unit is. So again, you've got that issue of putting the consumer unit in the middle of the house, which is done to save money on the internal wiring, but obviously creates you a problem with getting your tails to the board and the sub-mains and then having to fuse down. So in here they've gone for a grid switch, and you can see we've got the fridge, freezer, cooker hood, dishwasher and washing machine on it. Sockets dotted around the place, there's quite a few of those, which is nice to see. Matthew's currently got the cooker switch open, so you can see inside there and how they've kind of set the box back behind the plasterboard. I'm not a big fan of that, to be fair. I like to try and get the boxes up to the front face of the plasterboard if we can, at least to you know, within it, just so you don't have that gap there. Personal preference, I think. Quite how you would code that on an EICR, for example, you'd have difficulty in producing anything that resulted in an unsatisfactory installation, but it's rough, isn't it? It's not something that I would personally do. So you see we've got the boiler wire here with a flex coming out with a pipe. Again, not fantastic, but it is what it is. What else have we got? So we've got another heat detector up in here. We've got a little set of GU10 lamps up there, and then a pendant over this side. And I'm guessing they must all be switched together because there's only one light switch. We'll have to go around and functional check that at the end, unless there's another switch somewhere around here. No, nothing. So they must be switched together. That's a little bit of an odd setup, if that is the case. And again, we've got the isolators over there for, I assume, the oven and the hob. Is that right, Matthew?
Yeah. Oven on the left, hob on the right.
Okay. So they have at least provided 2 points of isolation for those, which is nice, and we've got the spare for the boiler as well. And this is the understairs cupboard, where we've got a little light fitting, and then the board that I showed you already, a little socket down there as well, and that's where all of the internet comes in. So we've got that. We go straight through to the back, and you'll see in here there's a little back garden. We'll have a look around the outside as well. Sockets either side of this radiator, a switch for the outside lighting. Is there not? What's that for then?
Two-way.
Okay, so talking nonsense, it's just a switch for in here, there's no outside lighting, as Matthew just said. So we've got a pendant up there. You can see the wiring in the back of this socket. Someone's gone to a bit of effort to dress them away nicely, and this box is actually flush into the plasterboard as well, so that's better. 25mm box, but there's nothing wrong with that if you just fit in normal socket fronts. Some people like to go to the trouble of sinking 35s and even 47s in everywhere. That's not something we'd ever do. We just put them in where they're needed for if we think there's going to be USBs. But even so, now a lot of the USBs will go in 25 boxes anyway. See there, they're reasonably well dressed and terminated, no issues with that one. There is strappers marked up on here, so that's nice. And again, the box is fitted a little bit better into the plasterboard at the back, so that's good to see. We've got another little room here, which is just a downstairs toilet. Fan into the ceiling, just a basic batten light and a fan isolator out the door. Little light switch there with the heating controls. Socket in the hall, as you'll see. So we'll have a little walk out the back and I'll show you around the side, and you can see that there's no, I don't think there's any external lighting, which is another common theme on new build. Often there hasn't been any put in, which makes it an absolute nightmare for us coming along later on when people decide they want some outside lighting and getting it all cabled up. So you'll see along here again, no outside lighting. We've got the extracts and the boiler flue coming out there. And then on the front, actually there is a light on the front door, so at least there's some light in there for people coming and going through the main entrance. Got the gas bond, that is metallic, so that's bonded. Let's see, we've got the earth loop between these two boards, and then these two go off. One goes to the gas, one goes to that other consumer unit, and then the consumer unit inside also goes to the gas as well. So they've done a bit of interesting interconnection with the bonds and earths, which is fine. And yeah, that's where we're at. We're going through getting test results now. Matthew's on with that. So it's not about just showing the shoddy work, we're trying to kind of reference into some of the good stuff as well. You know, it's not all bad. There are little bits here and there that could do with some improvement, definitely. And especially with it being new build, you'd expect it all to be sorted. The biggest problem with it was stuff wasn't actually working. So we've got this in here again, where you've got loose wiring on the outputs of the MCBs and also onto the bus bars. So, you know, that's as we know, loose connections build heat and can start fires. So that's not good to see. And on a new build estate like this, you kind of wonder how many other properties could this be a problem in. And I do attribute it exactly to using impact drivers on the terminations of these rather than a torque driver. So I'll show you some of the methods that we use in tightening these up, which is a little bit faster than doing them by hand, but also safe, where you're not overstressing the cage clamp. But we'll dig some of these out and I'll show you what they look like. So these are the 3 broken MCBs. This one has broken on the actual bus bar connection, and you'll see it just keeps spinning, so it's not tightening up, it won't bite down, so you can't get a torque. It's really loose, but it still opens out. You give it a bit of a shake and a poke. I think it stripped its thread on the actual screws, and that's probably because someone's gone into impact mode. On that one, these 2 are on the top. This one again, just spinning, and there's absolutely no pressure in that. I'm literally freewheeling it. There's nothing there, and that's not actually opening back up. So I think that's definitely stripped its thread on the actual screw. And again, somebody's just gone a bit too aggressive with their impact gun. This one's a bit different. It will tighten down without a conductor in it, but as soon as you put any conductor in, it goes to a point and then just starts slipping. And again, probably because it's been cross-threaded or had the thread stripped somewhere on this. And that's the point. Even if you're getting them to a set torque value when you're screwing down, if you're using an impact drill and it starts to go into hammer mode, you're going to kind of jolt those threads on the screw. This isn't like putting a screw into a wall. You know, it's different. These are metal parts, and as soon as you kind of affect the thread on either part, it won't fasten down at that point. So you've got to do them by hand. And I'll show you some of the tools later on in the video back at the office of what we use to achieve that as fast as we can. Because obviously we're all trying to do this as quickly as we can, but we want it to work afterwards. And these potential fire hazards, and there weren't low draw circuits. We had one on the cooker, one on a socket ring vinyl circuit, and one on the lighting circuit. So, you know, it could be a potential issue. I'm glad we found it. So I've got a couple of different MCBs here. We've got a Wilex double pole C63 and a Chint B20. These are both defective, so we can be a bit destructive with them without worrying about it too much. Now, one of the implements that some people will use when they're dressing away consumer units is something such as this. So this is the Milwaukee M12 impact gun, and it has 147 Newton meters of torque, which is quite a lot. And typically when people go at these, they will set it to speed 3 because they're wanting to do things quickly. That's the whole purpose. And you can have 2 things that happen, and these 2 different MCBs demonstrate it pretty well. So if you've got a typical impact gun, they usually have posi 2 bits in, and you know, people don't generally tend to put the right bit in, so you can kind of spin on the front of the screw head and you're actually damaging the screw head. So if I show you inside here, you can see it's actually rounded off parts of the screw head there, but at least it wasn't impacting because it caused that damage. Now the other thing that can happen, and if we demonstrate that one with the Chint one, so these haven't been stripped on the screw head already. If we start going at it, you can hear it impacting, and if you don't get off that quick enough, if you're on speed 3, so you can be winding in, it's very, very easy to start causing damage to the actual MCB because it's not the right tool for the job at the end of the day. And you can have, in this case, it's blown apart, but you can also do such things as snap these side walls on they typically snap off on the front edge, and that's not just Chint, that's any of the MCBs or RCBOs. They're all prone to it if you're using an impact driver. And as we saw with the Wilex ones, you can strip the threads on the bolts and the captive thread on the actual clamp itself. So it's really not advisable to be using impact drivers for tightening down. I know some people say they get a feel for it, so you can put it in speed 1 and go down onto the conductor and get to a point where you're happy it's nearly tight and then torque it up afterwards. For me, I don't think that's achievable consistently, and at some stage you're going to make a mistake and that can actually result in the cause of a fire. So it's not worth taking the chance. for me, there are tools you can use that will help you speed up those terminations, because we don't want to be crushing conductors, we don't want to be going past the manufacturer's torque rating, we definitely don't want to be impacting onto these metal cage clamps and screws or bolts. And one of the things that I use is the Speedy. Now, a lot of people don't like this. There's the new Speedy 2, which is actually much improved on this one, but I've not got around to purchasing it yet because it was quite expensive for this original Speedy. And the fact you can do up the screws like this, I've shown it on videos before, so it's not very torquey, it's not going to over tighten a cage clamp. It actually stops well before it's even approaching anything like tight enough, which is a complaint some people have. They consider it useless, but actually that's a good thing for me with your terminations. You don't want to be putting unnecessary torque into the termination. You want to take it so far and do a lot of the hard donkey work and then tighten it up yourself. So the Speedy, in conjunction with these weir torque bits, to show you that there, it's actually rated to 2.5 Newton meters, this one. I've got a selection of them with different values, so based on the board you're working on and what the torque requirements are, you can drop one of those in, zip the termination up like this, and then do the last few turns by hand and know you've achieved the required torque value. We drop these as well if you've not got a Speedy, so this is just a normal weir driver. This one's the 2.8 Newton meters one. You can drop it straight in there and just do them up by hand. You're going to achieve the right level of torque on your termination. No impacting, you're not damaging any of the materials, you're not putting stress onto the conductors, you're also not under tightening, so you're leaving it to a set value. The other one I use is this, so this is another weir torque driver, and this one's digital, so you know exactly what value of torque you're going to achieve because you can set it digitally. It's not a mechanical adjustment like some of them where you have to twist it around, and I don't think they're that precise. Obviously they must be within a reasonable tolerance, but this is exact, so you know exactly what you're getting. It's calibrated annually. Brilliant torque driver, that one actually. So that's the one I would normally be using to make all my terminations, because you can get a video of it being in use, or you can take a picture to prove that you have torqued down those terminals to the right level, because we all have these question marks on the manufacturer's torque values and if they're even appropriate. So if you can show that and evidence that you've done that on a particular board, that's a powerful bit of defense or assurance within your work. But yeah, just thought I'd show those. For me, it's a much better way to zip your terminations down with that. I know some people use the little Bosch, I think it's 10 volts or 12 volts, whatever it is, the Bosch Go, because that doesn't impact, it's just an electric screwdriver. I don't know what the torque values are on that. I'd have to check to be comfortable to use one on a consumer unit myself. But certainly with your socket fronts and such, you can utilise something like that there, I'm sure. But I wouldn't be using an impact gun for all of the reasons I just explained. So I hope you found that useful. Another look at a new build property. There was a few issues in there, primarily to do with the MCBs being over tightened, I suspect, with an impact gun, but of course that's just my opinion from my experience and stuff I've seen in the past. Can't prove it because I haven't seen the installation being carried out. It could just be a manufacturing defect. Also, we had the problem with the way the spotlights were terminated, and I don't hold that entirely against the electricians. They're an absolute nightmare, some of those cans to actually wire in, and it is difficult to get the outer sheath in and under the clamp and get your conductors in to the terminal blocks. They've not been made in a very user-friendly way, and it's just asking for people to cut corners because they don't think they're ever going to be seen. They don't see the danger in the work that they're doing. Yeah, I think we can actually look at that as a industry and make a better way of terminating onto those downlights. And actually, to be fair to a lot of manufacturers, they have done. There's some brilliant connectors out there. I know Quickwire have got some that are separate to the lamps themselves, but also most of the manufacturers have got push fit terminals now with nice points of connection where we're not having to work in tiny silly little spaces and fiddle around with screws and other bits of nonsense. It's much simplified. And again, I guess this comes down to cost on that particular job, where the developers maybe picked a budget range of accessory or something, and yeah, that's the end result. The smoke alarms as well, and again, you need to get your wiring enclosed in an appropriate termination point. and I don't think the way they've been wired is that. So they got the basic insulation pushed above the ceiling void, and I'm sure some people will try and argue that that is an acceptable way of doing it because it's enclosed within the fabric of the building and that forms a junction box. I've heard that argument before, so yeah, that's always an interesting one. But the actual test results on the circuits that have been installed were good. We didn't find any issues with any of that, so we're getting good values. It was nice to see that they'd fitted an additional meter cabinet. There'd been some effort in the way the cables had been dressed in some of the accessories. There were some snaggy little rough bits. You're not going to get perfection on these installs. I don't just want to be appearing to sit here and pull that apart because, it wasn't horrendous. There were some things in it that are actually good. But equally, there's places that can be improved. And I hope sharing that on my little YouTube channel has shown that in the most honest and unobjective way possible. I don't just want to be sat here panning stuff. There are people out there in the social media space who just like to pull things apart and say that it's rubbish and that particular electrician was terrible. This is kind of trying to look at some of the industry problems, if you like, and what we can do to improve them rather than focusing on the individual who's produced a bit of questionable work. And there's definitely improvements that we can make in new build. I've said it on the last video I did around when we went to install an EV charge point at a new build property, and also on the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast where I spoke about it as well. So we can definitely find places to make improvement. The way that they're actually quality checked is one of them, because the certificate that was issued with this install was nothing like acceptable. There were problems with that. But I'm not going to cover that on the video because it's got too much of the contractor's details on there, and I don't think that's fair without their right to input onto it as well. But yes, I do think there are ways we can improve in how we check electrical installations in new build. I think a lot of the time we're finding low-cost labour and apprentice labour is used to carry out a lot of the installation work. That's then not correctly checked by a qualified supervisor or mentor, and then a tester is going around to check off 100, 200 of these properties. And I don't think they look invasively enough into what's been done while they're doing their initial verification. And I guess it all boils down to the allocation of funds and time onto these things. It is a very competitive marketplace, so it's a tricky one to actually sort out. But I'd like to know what you think. As always, get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think of the video, or if you've got any questions about the install we saw. If there's anything that you picked up on that I maybe not mentioned, get involved, drop them below. As always, just a friendly debate and discussion. It's not about trying to prove we're cleverer than anyone else or call any sort of work out. It's just to talk about some of the things we see in the day-to-day world of being an electrician. That is exactly what my channel is about. Thank you all very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, well, you don't have to like it. Thumbs up, thumbs down, and subscribe to the channel. That'd be brilliant. And I'll catch you all on the next one.